Hello everyone, it's Jamal Thomas. Welcome to the Progressive Soapbox. Let me make sure I have sound. This title sounds like clickbait, but it's not clickbait. It's actually accurate. I have hyperbole in the least. There's my sound. Good. It's not hyperbole in the least. So the other day when I had Richard Wolff, and by the way, shout out to Elizabeth Voss, who was on a little bit earlier, and Eric Ryberg. Ryberg is running for the Green Party in California. I think earlier I said the great state of California. And Elizabeth Voss was talking about the latest, I guess you can say, developments dealing with the Julian Assange case. He's trapped in the Ecuadorian embassy. Despite having diplomatic status, they have kept him there under threat of arrest. Apparently, against international law, that's, again, at this point, we should stop saying it because that assumes that there is something actually called international law, as opposed to just somebody just doing whatever they want and nobody can do anything about it. But today is a slightly happier note. So the other day when I had Richard Wolff on, I was feeling myself. I was on cloud nine. I was like, yes, Richard fucking Wolff. It was on my show. I was able to ask him questions. The socialists. Oh, it's awesome. It was awesome. It's Marxist. Now, Richard Wolff has informed my workable point of view. And so I have a certain reference. There are very few people on this planet that I think I have a certain reverence for. Fresco being one, Richard Wolff being one. And it's not necessarily because I agree with each and everything the person said. It's different. It's how you process the world. If I give more value to how do I weigh it as opposed to how much it weighs, if that makes sense. I hope that makes sense. Howard Zinn, didn't get the opportunity to talk to him before he passed. Didn't get the opportunity to talk to Fresco before he passed. One of those other people is Noam Chomsky. Noam Chomsky. Feeling myself after that interview, having eaten my Wheaties and having talked to Richard Wolff, I sent Noam Chomsky an email asking him for an interview. I said, hello, my name is Jamal Thomas. I have a show by the same name. You can look at my content. You've been one of the people that helps inform my workable point of view. My audience and I will be honored to have you on the show for an interview, for a conversation. You can set the time. You can set the duration. All you. It's all you. Show me when. Just tell me when. I'll be there with bells on. I had no expectation of getting a response back from Noam Chomsky. Zero expectation. I went along my day as if that email had never been sent. And within a few days, I get a reply. I can't even look at it. I give it to my wife. I'm like, here. What does he say? Is he telling me go fuck myself? She says, no, it's fine. And he says, I'm busy. I have interviews. My schedule's through the roof. Now, right off the bat, I'm keeping this email for the rest of my life because Noam Chomsky has just responded to me, and this was the first time I've had any contact at all with Chomsky. Like anything else other than interviews or something like that, that's just me watching. That's not him ever responding to me or acknowledging the fact that I exist. So I said, fair enough. And the thought came, well, if you can't be in an in-person interview, can you answer questions? So I pushed it a little bit. I mean, had nothing to lose. I didn't want to piss Noam Chomsky off. I don't want Noam Chomsky cursing me out. That in and of itself would have been an amazing fucking show. Noam Chomsky telling me to go fuck myself. But that's not what happened. I said, look, I understand. And I appreciate you responding to me. I'm keeping this email for life. Even though it's a rejection from Noam Chomsky. So fair enough. Can you at the very least answer 2 questions? Now, mind you, to be fair, those 2 questions had like 30 questions built into those 2 questions. But essentially, can you answer 2 questions? And I was trying to push it. Noam Chomsky said, I can't give you... He responded again. Give the phone to my wife again. And my wife says, yeah, he says it's too much. But he did respond to some of the questions. So I'm going to read his responses. Now, what I was trying to get at is, I was trying to get at 2 things. And one, I don't think he fully understood what I was getting at when I asked him the question. But I was trying to make a point to Chomsky. if Hillary Clinton won that election, I say you were advocating Hillary Clinton because you thought she was an existential threat. You thought she was a much worse scenario than Donald Trump. Fair enough. I can understand why he says that. He says he believes that Donald Trump is much, much worse. But what I asked him was a little something different. My point to him was, if Hillary Clinton privatizes Social Security, if in addition to privatizing Social Security, she gets us further involved into a conflict in the Middle East, and let's say she also passes the TPP. I'm trying to think of worst case scenarios. I wasn't necessarily saying those were the things she was going to do. I was trying to think, what's the worst case scenario? Because I wanted to place that worst case scenario against the thing of, now that she's done all these horrible things, if she's running against Ted Cruz in 2020, will you, Mr. Chomsky, who doesn't necessarily agree, who considers himself an anarchist, who is as far from Hillary Clinton as a mole is from a mansion, would you also vote for her again? And if you would advocate for her again, and if you would vote for her again, doesn't it make your vote perfunctory? Meaning, doesn't your vote not matter? You've been caught in this level of brinksmanship of this Chinese finger trap where you're stuck voting for what you consider to be the left's or evil party. When does it stop? When does it change? And how can you ever get anything different if you're stuck in this situation where you're always voting for the lesser evil, as you put it? How long does this go on? And certainly you can see that this can go on in perpetuity, and this has gone on for the past several years. Noam Chomsky was nice enough to answer that question, even though, like I say, he misunderstood the first part. So I'm going to show that answer. He's being nice as can be, so there's that. And I probably should have worded this slightly differently, but it's what it is. Thank you for your response. One last thing, and I don't mean to be worrisome. Yeah, I'm doxing myself. One last thing, and I don't mean to be worrisome. Two, really. I'm holding on to this email forever as you're awesome, and I appreciate the response, even as a rejection. And two, I understand the schedule is full. May I ask 2 questions as a proxy for an actual interview? If you can't, again, totally understood. In case you don't go further, honestly, thank you for your career and your life's work. You are one of the few people that have influenced my workable point of view of the world. Zinn, Fresco, Baldwin, to name a few others. Thank you very much. That's not fluff. I actually believe it. It's actually true. The first time I saw a Zinn lecture, it blew my mind. Like you're sitting there like, oh my God, why didn't I know this before? And again, it's not even that, why did I know this? Why was I not thinking this way, if that makes sense? One of the things Zinn kind of made the point to was one of his lectures, the difference between a just war and a just cause, or just cause and a just war. Making this distinction between something happens doesn't necessarily automatically mean you need to punch somebody in the nose. That those things are different and those things need to be seen as different. And in our weird psychopathic society, those things aren't seen as different. Even if there was a chemical strike in Syria, is a strike or military strike the best way to handle that particular situation? It's not thought about. It's not questioned. Just doesn't. American public doesn't think twice about it. Something happens, strike. No questions. The public itself has gotten so accustomed to this kind of weird, odd behavior that everything requires a punch in the nose, as if America is the world's policeman, regardless of the consequences, by the way. Meaning regardless of the fallout of those actions. The United States doesn't care who's going to take over in Syria, or at the very least it may care, but it doesn't care to the standpoint of the only stable person in that particular thing is Bashar al-Assad. And the Muslim extremists who are going to take over are going to murder many of the Christians. They've been raping and killing and pillaging using the weapons of the United States and resources of the United States. I mean, come on. They don't care. Like, I guess I'm just kind of making this point. There's a difference between something bad happening and what you need to do in response to that bad thing happening. And that was one of those things that Zinn delineated. It's how I think about this stuff has been built by various things, but that specific thing was one of those things that blew my mind when I first heard it, because it was something that, for whatever reason, never occurred to me. Analysis of the Revolutionary War, analysis of the Civil War, all those things. It's fascinating when you start piecing into, was it necessary, was it right, was it the best course of action, comparing it to other countries around the world and other societies. It's fucking fascinating, but that's kind of besides the point. So, political change. You advocated and voted for voting against Donald Trump as he was the greater evil in the race, despite the shady dealings in the primary. The shady dealings has nothing to do with it. It was his horrendous programs, which we can now see very clearly. Well, we knew those things were going to be horrible in the first place. And he's right. I shouldn't have connected these two things. This was my own feelings into play, so I fucked up the sentence. But nevertheless, the shady dealings had nothing to do with it. With one minus point, the shady dealings does have something to do with it. Like, I understand what Chomsky is saying, and this is kind of why I would have loved to have him to talk about it, because I kind of want to hear how he processes, how he pieces this together. One of the parties usurped the democratic process. And in usurping the democratic process, I am supposed to turn around and vote for that person despite that person usurping the process? I mean, come on. You cheated the guy. Well, at the exact same time, you're telling me that this whole thing was fair and balanced and equal and all this other stuff. It was nonsense. It was nonsense. You defrauded millions of people of $200 and some million. Not just that, put your thumb on the scale of the political process, contorting the process so people couldn't necessarily get a fair representation of who they wanted. Why on earth should I turn around and vote for the person that cheated the guy who I was supporting? And what does that say about representative government, or for that matter, even any notion of democracy, if one party ends up cheating and because the other party is so horrendous that you still end up voting for the person that cheated? Shouldn't there be a consequence? Shouldn't there be a consequence? Shouldn't there be a fundamental line that you draw where you say, hey, if you cheat, you lose? Hands down. You have my consequence. You have what I'm going to do. If you cheat my guy, you lose. If that consequence was fully understood, maybe they wouldn't have cheated him in the first place. But let's keep going. But I understand what he's saying. He's not making the connection between the two. I am. Assuming Clinton won in 2016, also assume Clinton repudiated everything she noted in the primary to get by Sanders, passes TPP, private Social Security, invades Syria. Now, this is where I think he slightly gets me wrong, and I should have explained this as worst case scenario. There's some limited evidence that Bill Clinton was considering some form of privatization in a deal with Gingrich, but it was dropped, and there was no... Well, it was dropped because of the blowjob, the Monica Lewinsky stuff. And there was no serious indication that Hillary Clinton was considering it in 2016, nor did she call for an invasion of Syria, though, as of 2012, 2013, all of NATO powers had thought that Assad could be overthrown. It's Trump who's been bombing Syria, but that's the least of his crimes. It's Trump that's bombing Syria because Hillary Clinton didn't get into office. Come on, no, be fair. Be fair. And I understand what he means. And I worded this wrong. That's my fault. Yeah, he's missing my point. My point was, assuming that the worst case scenario, that the woman repudiated everything that she said she was going to do. All right, let's keep going. Because it leads into this one, which I think he starts to answer. She's running against Ted Cruz in 2020. Would you once again advocate for Hillary Clinton in 2020? And if so, does it make your vote perfunctory? Seeing as this trope can and will be used in perpetuity as long as the trope bears fruit, as is effective in getting people like you, who doesn't support Clinton policies in any way, to still comply. I hope that makes sense. Essentially, assuming Hillary Clinton does the worst. Everything that she said she was going to do, she repudiated, and she started doing even more gross stuff. She's running against Ted Cruz in 2020. People like you're an anarchist. You don't necessarily support Clinton's agenda or anything else. And despite not supporting her agenda, even you can be bent to comply. And if even people like you can be bent to comply, doesn't that make your vote to some degree perfunctory based on the game or the brinksmanship that's being played from the standpoint of the political parties? The Democratic Party using this kind of least worst scenario in an odd way, enriching themselves when the candidate is insane. Let's see his answer. I wouldn't advocate. He said, I wouldn't advocate voting for Clinton just as I didn't in 2016. You did advocate voting for Clinton. I'd advocate against Cruz in a swing state. No, I see this thing. I see what you're doing. I certainly would adopt your position of advocating of Trump Cruz, which is the exact meaning of not supporting Clinton in a swing state. Their policies are utterly horrendous, agreed. Far worse than Clinton's, agreed. And I would also continue to urge that we not fall for the propaganda that tries to get us to focus on the quadrennial extravaganza. That's fair. The decision, which seems very clear, should take 5 minutes, and then we go back to some serious organization and activism. Let me read that again. I wouldn't advocate for Clinton just as I didn't in 2016. I'd advocate against Cruz in a swing state. I think I know what he's getting at. I think Noam Chomsky is playing with words on this one. I wouldn't advocate it. It's like saying, I didn't vote for Clinton. I voted against Trump. It's like saying that, if that makes sense. But it's like, but in order to do that, you voted for Clinton. You were advocating for Clinton. It feels shitty doing this while he's not here. I wouldn't advocate for Clinton just as I didn't in 2016. I'd advocate against Cruz in a swing state. I certainly, I think he's supposed to say, wouldn't adopt your position of advocating for Trump Cruz, which is exactly the meaning of not supporting Clinton in a swing state. Their policies are utterly horrendous, far worse than Clinton's, and I would also continue to urge that we not fall for the propaganda. Essentially, look, this election happens once every 4 years, and this is theater, and ultimately organizing and activism is the way to get things accomplished. Let's keep going. It's almost done. Doesn't this Chinese finger trap gets its power from the seemingly no-win situation the public is crammed into? This is political brinksmanship as a political strategy, assuming blacks, Hispanics, labor have nowhere else to go. Is it not true that this stunt has been used for decades, but has only really come into its own with the rabid nature of the group of Republicans? Am I wrong in comparing the left that continues to vote Democrat as being the political equivalent of an abused spouse? The party persists because people give it energy to persist, and real change is only possible when it utterly and completely fails in its current strategy. Something that can't be done as long as the abused spouse, or in a political context, left and independents are terrified into voting for the Democratic Party. That's all true if we allow ourselves to be trapped within a doctrinal system. But as I said, that's a mistake. We need not accept the propaganda. We should have spent 5 minutes trying to avert the worst, and really bad in this case, and then go back to serious work. Chomsky is fucking awesome. I'm going to see if I can put this at the bottom so everybody can read for themselves. I wish he was here for this. Like there's God, man. There's so much, because there's parts that I want to clarify so he can understand what I mean, and there are other parts that I don't know if I fully agree with him on. Like if you're in a political space and you're voting against somebody, you're still voting for somebody. So if somebody goes and say, I'm voting against Ted Cruz or I'm voting against Donald Trump, let's not be coy. You're still voting for a particular person in your way of voting against the other person. Come on. And saying not supporting Clinton, I have a video of Chomsky supporting Clinton where he's saying people need to go out and vote Clinton because Donald Trump is an existential threat. And I think I know it. Like I said, he's being somewhat coy. You should not vote for Clinton. I didn't advocate for Clinton. I advocated against Trump. He's trying to make this case that those things are different. I don't think those things are. The last answer is vague gibberish. You think so? Watch it, Garden Home. You're talking about sacred text. Sacred text, which is Chomsky. That's all true if we allow ourselves to be trapped within a doctrinal system. But as I said, that's a mistake. We need to not accept the propaganda. We should spend 5 minutes trying to avert the worst. Really, I think what he's saying is Donald Trump is the worst. He's making the assumption that Donald Trump is the worst, and it is clear by any reasonable standard that Donald Trump is worse. I think that's his point. And so it's like you take 5 minutes and you move on. They cheated my guy. I mean, they usurped democracy in a real tangible way. Whatever you want to say about Donald Trump, the Democratic Party is the one that cheated. I mean, come on. Like, so it's like I don't have that dispassionate distance. And I'm not even sure if that dispassionate distance is right if you actually want to get anything done. There is a such thing as heightening the contradictions in a system. You have the worst case scenario. My fear with Donald Trump, however, has to do with what Donald Trump may do abroad. Noam Chomsky making the point that Donald Trump is the one that's bombing Syria. Hillary Clinton wanted a missile defense shield in Syria. That's what she wanted. Now, in order to get that missile defense shield in Syria, she would have to put troops in Syria, just like those troops are in there now. Saying that Donald Trump is the one that's bombing Syria is being coy. I mean, if Hillary Clinton was in that office, she'd be the one that would be bombing Syria, and Donald Trump would be the one sitting at home playing with himself. I mean, come on. That's just by virtue of him being the president of the United States. So I don't necessarily think that one is fair. But clearly, Noam Chomsky thinks that Donald Trump is the worst and is an existential threat. I don't know if I agree. I mean, I think both are. I honestly think Hillary Clinton could have gotten us into a larger war. And I also am in this situation of, and Noam Chomsky I think would agree with me on this, the climate thing by itself is a game changer. Like these are massive, massive issues that we're confronted with as a society. And do we go with radical incrementalism, just idea of status quo? Or do you try to push for a change? In fact, I don't necessarily know how you get a change with a Hillary Clinton. There are no activism. There is no activists. There are no movements. There's nothing there to push or move the political system itself. The thing that's there to push the political movement is them losing. People pulling themselves out into a different context. Now, if Noam Chomsky wanted to say that's organization, I would agree. That's to some degree some level of organization. But I would say the organization needs to start at a status of no. It needs to start at I'm done. The sooner they realize that. Look, part of the reason that the Democratic Party is allowed to persist in the way it persists is because it knows that there will be people there to vote for it. If people got it across to them that we're done, hands off. I'm no longer playing in this particular game. I am done. Check, please. This is where I get off. If they knew that in a real significant way, that they had no chance of winning the election, that they were done. You have dollars or pitchforks. Dollars only work because dollars get you that seat. Those dollars don't work if those dollars are not gonna, if you can't get elected because of something you're doing or something you're doing is so heinous and disgusting. I guess the point I'm getting at here is, if people stood in a solidarity of no, if all these lefty networks was on the status of no, if you had these people who really wanted things to change, something like Hartman or something like that, and I know people have shit on Hartman, but I honestly do believe that Hartman is to the left. I think just so happens he's a Democrat and that fucks with his compass. If those people really want to save the party, the way to save the party is by saying no. Let the crack-addicted boyfriend have a conniption fit and vomit and choke to death on the couch by himself, or he gets himself clean. In either case, you don't need to be there for it. And the fact is, you being there for it allows it to persist. So I love the fact that Chomsky responded to me. I appreciate, like nobody's business, Chomsky responded to me. I'm going to put this letter at the bottom for people to see for themselves. I appreciate this. I genuinely appreciate it. So I don't want to send them a thank you, because if I send them a thank you, I don't want to be like, this fucking guy sends me another email. RTJ Primal. Oh, thank you, Primal. Thank you for your help, man. I appreciate it. J. Scott has also responded. Who you telling? I was blown away by that. Like, I sat there like, holy shit, Noam Chomsky just responded to me. I sent an invite to Abby Martin. I sent an invite to, that was a gentleman, Paul Beckwith, dealing with climate. I've been sending out invites because I realized I try to make connections with other people who are more, I guess, who are in their field. So like Abby Martin, did you do anything with Israel? I sent one to Ben Norden. I sent another one to Max Blumenthal. They didn't respond, but Noam Chomsky did. Think about that shit. That's mind-blowing. Peter Joseph has always ignored me. So, is what it is. Trudy, No has to be both parties, two-headed vulture. Trudy, yes. Trudy, yes, I agree. Man, this is kind of why I wish he was here. I would love to have this conversation with him. Because, look, I think from the standpoint of the left, it's a conversation that needs to be had. This idea of what is the left and where should the left be. And not be dicks about the conversation, but actually have a real, honest conversation. I've invited multiple people. I've invited Nita Turner on the show. I've invited Mika Kantz. None of them want to stand and hold that particular disposition and explain why, regardless of being slapped and beaten and kicked, that they still remain in the party. I've even invited the other guy, the one who's always whining about the DNC, the Sargus, the one who was demoted but remained a Democrat. Zogby, I think Zogby is his name. I've invited a ton of people from the Dem Inter crowd to have a conversation. I am awesome in my conversations. I'm never a dick. I let people get their say. I may interrupt a little bit too much. But they were offered. Nobody accepted. So I've even invited, I tried to get Our Revolution or somebody from Our Revolution to come on to the show. So far, nobody's taken me up on that. So, all right, guys. I'm not going to keep this one in any longer. I've gone for 26 minutes, and that's like 25 minutes too long. So, a lot of people are going to jump back to the party during the 2020 primaries just to support Bernie. Well, yeah. I mean, I would support Sanders. I'm not in this thing of, my rule has always been support the person who represents your interests. If that person just so happens to be a Democrat, have at it. I don't, my reasoning is I don't like this blanket thing of don't do X under no circumstances. That's not necessarily where I am. If Tulsi Gabbard ran, I would vote for Tulsi. If Nina Turner ran, I would vote for Nina. I love me some Nina Turner. And yeah, if Sanders ran as a Democrat, I would vote for Sanders. I'm going to keep this 10 minutes Thomas. Oh, that's hilarious. Jamal, let me keep this 10 minutes Thomas. I vote for Bernie as an MPP. What's an MPP? I don't know what MPP is, Trudy. No should mean no, but. Hello, jerk. Come on. No should mean no, but. Look, I mean, my only issue here is there is a different quantity. For example, you have some Democratic Socialist of America who runs as a Democrat. That person is a DSA, even though he's running as a Democrat. Should I not vote for the person who's a DSA if I actually like what they're talking about? I mean, come on, that's not fair. If Tulsi Gabbard, if I was in Hawaii, would I vote for Tulsi Gabbard? Hell yeah, I would love to vote for Tulsi Gabbard. Does a D beside her name put a headwind? Yes, it does put a headwind. Chomsky's not calling. Hello, jerk. Sometimes no means yes. That's funny. Baltazar 228. I will vote for him as an independent, but not as a Democrat unless he shits on Democrats from now until the election. Well, that's interesting. If he essentially just bashes Democrats, if he goes after them. Well, I would say this, Bill. He's started to establish himself. Like, so if you notice, he's been moving the playing field. How can I say this? Bernie Sanders is moving the playing field to the left, and he's been forcing the other Democrats that plan to run to do something similar. So Sanders is for Medicare for all. Everyone knows it. Sanders is for college. Everybody knows it. Then you have Kamala Harris. Yeah, I'm for Medicare for all. Yeah, that's what I'm for. And you have a few of them coming out saying, okay, we're not going to take corporate PAC money. Now, corporate PAC money is not the majority of their money. You get more bang for your buck by making this appearance as if you're giving up corporate PAC money as opposed to actually, giving it up. They're trying to distinguish themselves and trying to show themselves and create some kind of parity with Sanders on this. Well, every time they do, the Sanders moves the playing field out a little bit more. So it's, what's taking place over there? They're murdering Palestinians, and Israel need to, stop, and we need to help the Palestinians. Well, Kamala Harris is never going to say that. Kamala Harris was mum when they murdered those 58 people over in Israel. Moving the playing field out, job guarantee. Yeah, we need to have some federal jobs guarantee. Further out, unions. We need to make sure that unions are safe and protected. He is moving the playing field out, and he's moving it in a way that the Democrats can't keep up. If he runs in 2020, I suspect that these things are going to be on his platform, and that platform is going to be further to the left than what he was prior. He's created a political space for himself. And whether the Democrats realize it or not, by trying to ape him, they allow him more political latitude to go further to the left. So I don't necessarily know what the primaries are going to turn out to be this time around, because there's going to be more people who are going to be there. But it's fascinating. And no, he doesn't seem to be hitting them, though. He doesn't seem to be hitting them. So I feel you. If Jill Stein ran as a Democrat, I'd spit in her face. Jesus Christ, Sox. That's kind of rough, man. That's kind of rough. Oscar Santana. Well, you see, that's the issue. Democrats who are pretending to support issues that Sanders supported. How do we know they won't turn around and fuck us over like Obama did? Right there. Which is, this is kind of my point. They're aping his positions. Sanders has made them better liars. Now, the question becomes, at which point do they okay, I can't go to that far. Israel is going to be one of those issues they're not going to touch with a 10-foot pole that Sanders would hit pretty hard. College, they're not going to hit it, not necessarily like talking about, or at the very least, nobody's going to believe them when they're talking about it. And even if one of those Democrats gets in office, they should do what I suggested Donald Trump do. When Donald Trump got in office, what Donald Trump should have said was, I am going to give big, beautiful health care to everybody. Now, the reason I would do that is because I know the Republican Party is not going to allow it. They're going to bitch and moan and ballyhoo and everything else. But it makes it look as if the President of the United States is bucking his party to essentially try to push through something that the President of the United States knows goddamn well the party would never push through. There's something to be said about politics and political theater. The left is not the greatest at using this. They think the argument wins it. And it's not necessarily the argument that wins this stuff. People are more moved through emotion than moved through the theory of it all. He's making them better liars. He's making them better liars. My hope is that the public doesn't necessarily buy into it, or if somebody just like Sanders is running, they would lean more towards the side of this guy seems more right than the other people who are making this shit up. So, anarchism is the future. From your mouth to God's ears, with caveats. With certain caveats. Lefty gatekeeper. Bernie ended up as a sheepdog. Jesse Ventura brought that up. Bernie would not attack the DNC for their BS. He would not run as an independent. That I agree with you on, right? So, yeah, I think that's objectively true. I like Sanders, but I think that's true. Moni G, big round of applause. Jay Scott, that's the propaganda Chomsky was talking about. The lies. The lies. The lies. Jamal, are you going to be on Ebon Kim's anniversary show reunion? As many people as possible who have been on his show, which his shows turn to 1 year old tomorrow. Holy shit, show turns 1 year old tomorrow. Rainbow Boombox, I'm not sure. Maybe. Just kind of depends on what's taking place. So, maybe. Basil Peterson. When we begin having food shortages due to habitat loss and abrupt climate change, then we will finally eat the rich. Their organs will be like foie gras. What the voters think is only part of the equation, not the most important variable when it comes to policy. Gardner. Zox Alex, lefty gatekeeper. Yep, I saw that interview too. Trudy. Bernie says he does not do negative campaigning. Well, it depends on what you mean by negative campaigning. I mean, putting a knife in Hillary Clinton with those, talking about those speeches. Is that negative? It's true. Is it negative? Negative. Sometimes those things are perspective. I agree with you. He doesn't do dirty campaigning. Fair enough. I agree with you on that. That doesn't necessarily mean he shouldn't be hitting Democrats, though. And he should be hitting them left and right to make a clear delineation. What I suspect, though, it may be too early. Rob Lenoise, you sniveling little bitch. Shut the fuck up and board the ship. Oh, Rob. Don't be that way, Rob. Don't be that way, Rob. I've always said I was for Sanders. I've never deviated. I bitched and moaned. I bellyhooed, but I haven't changed it. Why the dislikes? I have no idea. Some people have some feelings with Sanders. Christian B, can you interview Sherry Hunkala about the Poor People's Economic Human Rights Campaign, Poor People's March on Washington? I saw that. So that's Reverend Barber's thing, right? I would love to interview Reverend Barber. He's picking up Martin Luther King's mantle. What's the woman's name? Sherry Hunkala. I love that name. All right. Campaign. All right. Killer Mike. You guys, my reach is I appreciate your inflated belief in my capacity to reach these people. Some of these people, there's no way I'm going to be able to get. They arrested Nick Browning. Yeah, I did that one. They did. Bernie was too nice to begin with. Couldn't even say she takes money to do speeches because she paid to help the corporations. He said, I'm sure some interesting things must have been said in those speeches. Balthazar, and maybe you guys have a point. Maybe you have a point. I mean, is it he's too nice? I mean, and is it possible that him being too nice, though, is the thing that attracts people in the first place? Like, it's hard to know sometimes, man. It's like you change something in the formula and it fucks up the entire thing. If he was vicious and went after her, would people feel that it's him just being a regular, typical politician? Is him being that way to some degree comes across as him being above it all? So it's like he's hitting her while at the same token being above it all. One of the things I was reading in the books, I think it was Shatter. Either Shatter or one of the other books on the campaign. This anger in the Clinton campaign that Sanders seemed to be above it all. That he was able to say like speeches and hit her for all the stuff. And she was like, how dare you say I'm corrupt? How dare you say I'm corrupt? As I take all of this money for these speeches. But in hitting her, they felt like he was above it all. Like he was able to hit her and then kind of just like, I'm above politics. Which annoyed the shit out of them. They felt like they were in the muck. And for whatever reason, they couldn't lay a glove on him. And then they also had this feeling of if they did lay a glove on him, then his supporters wouldn't necessarily vote for him. On that part, she was right. Keep your hands off. Nobody told you to be corrupt. That being said, to some degree, I think that might have lended to the above it all thing, though. I'm not sure if you can get away from it. Bernie's not too nice. He just knows if you call out shenanigans, they spin it against him, so he just keeps going with his message. Lorm's one. That's not a bad one, too. Again, I would love to have Sanders on to ask him these questions myself, but no one ever asked him these questions. I heard something about anarchism. It would be good for Jamal to have a live chat with an anarchist, not an anarcho-primitive. Yeah, I know, right? The anarchist thing was not anarcho-capitalism. That's fucking insane. Libertarianism is not. It's not like American libertarianism. I mean, ultimately, they've started calling it, what do they call it? Social libertarianism or something like that to try to make a delineation from American version of libertarianism. Speaking of anarchism, Noam Chomsky is anarchist. I tried to get one on my channel. Tried to get Chomsky. Yeah. Hey, I just super chat you, Jamal. Yeah, you call me a bitch or something. Yeah, you called me a sniveling little bitch. I saw it. I'll take your criticism, sir. Thank you for the assistance, but I'll take your criticism. Christian Jamal has to get permission from Progressive Voice before he does interviews. There's also a fee paid to Progressive Voice, of course. I'm never gonna live that down. Hey, I just super chat you, Jamal. I read your super chat, Rob. I read it like twice. Moni G, I concur, Trudy. What did Trudy say? I don't see what Trudy said. Corbyn and Stein need to have an intervention with Sanders. You know, I would say this, though. When everybody else had shut the fuck up about the stuff that took place with Israel, Sanders didn't. Like, he at the very least came out with a statement, and he's been, look, say what you will about him, he's been far more vocal. Nikki M, who's the abused spouse now, Jamal? Uh-oh. Hey, you hot Rob. He read it out loud, you sniveling little bitch. I read it out loud like twice. I'd rather call myself a classical libertarian, also known as a libertarian socialist, right? I still said Jill is Plan B, Jamal. I want more than just a pressure candidate. Like, I actually want political change. I mean, if you notice, the top of the letter on that thing said political change. Because I was trying to get to the point of Chomsky of how do you get political change if you continuously do the same thing that you've always done? And the strategy of voting for the lesser evil, the argument that Chomsky is making here is an argument that can be used in perpetuity, forever. Like an unending string of shitty, status quo Democrats that get you further and further and further to the right. I mean, come on. I mean, he's like the hard work of activism. Activism to what end? Like, who cares about your activism if you have no power at all to take somebody out their seat? You need a political wing, and you need the other side of the wing to be receptive to the activism. If you don't have the political wing to be receptive, then the activism doesn't matter. At least I don't think it does. The political parties themselves have started to turn a 10 ear, at the very least, especially on the federal level. These guys have been able to make progress and changes from the standpoint in state level, but it seems like the federal level, it seems to be like siloed from that stuff, from public sentiment and public will. I don't know what movements there are to do that. I don't know what hard work he's talking about. What I do know is one of the parties cheated the candidate. And I know I don't want to reward that party for doing that. I know I don't want to still play into this game of least worse in perpetuity, especially if your goal is to actually get something accomplished. I just don't see it. Activism is 365 days a year. Voting is 1 day. Yeah. And that was his point. I mean, and his point is right. I understand his point. I guess what I'm saying is you need both. You need the political wing and you need the somebody on the outside kind of pushing and tugging. Beltazar 228. Time traveling Russian alien bot hacked my phone. What happened? Time traveling Russian alien bots hacked my goddamn cell phone. That's what happened. Don't play the less of the two evils game. Soviet winter prison. Yeah, that's kind of my point. And I understand what Noam is getting at. Like, look, activism is difficult. You need to continuously do activism. You need to push on the system and everything else. But then it becomes, but Noam, if the people who you're pushing on the political system don't care, because at the end of the day, they know that you're going to still vote for whoever they put up because you're terrified of the other guy, how can you ever get political change in that system? I just don't see it. That's why I wish you had his ass here. But I got to be honest. I am blown away that he responded to me. I am immensely... I'm going to keep that letter for fucking ever. I am blown away he responded to me. So, Anna Stansel, and I'll end it on this. They have no power without us. Activism is what happens in teacher strikes. J. Scott, yeah. J. Scott, you missed my point. Like I said, in the state levels, it was working. Like in the situation of these state houses. I said, yeah, in state houses. I said, but the federal government seems like it's siloed or something, where it's like, don't necessarily get that stuff in. Not just activism worked in state houses, it worked even in Republican districts and some of those things. Yeah, they try to screw over the workers, but the workers still fought back. Phrase is, the lesser of two evils is still evil. That's the Jill Stein thing. That's what Jill Stein saying. The lesser of two evils is evil. I guess, look, my question would be this. I think any change and all changes that has taken place in the United States has taken place through activism. So I think that's fair enough. Usually there will be something receptive, though, for that activism. Meaning there's something outstretched, some kind of political part that's willing to take those people on and kind of take up the cause of the people, pressuring the parties. Do you honestly believe that that's taking place now? I don't see it. What I would say, though, is to be fair, what Sanders has done is created this kind of sort of a change in the political space. If you remember when Obama was running, they couldn't even get public option to be talking about. And the moment they took off his public option out the window. Nobody's talking about it. Increasing Social Security was never talked about. Education was never talked about. This thing of unions, never talked about. All of these things have hit the agenda in a big splashy way that has never been this way in my lifetime. So was that activism, or was that a political campaign that raised the consciousness of the public? So I'll leave it at that. Yeah, I like that one. Frame the letter and put it on the wall next to your buddies from the Enterprise. I haven't had my thing up. I haven't put my things up. Guys, thank you all for showing up. This is me feeling awesome that Noam Chomsky responded. So I wanted to give his response. I really wish he would have been here. I really wish I could have got him here. But I am profoundly appreciative that he even responded, because I have to be honest, I had no expectation of a response. So I'm going to put the message at the bottom. Hopefully it allows enough room for it so you guys can read it for yourself. And Noam Chomsky would never see this video, but thank you very much for your response. Good looking out. All right, guys. If you enjoy the content, please feel free to share, like, subscribe, and of course, you guys can always support through Patreon. Thanks, everyone. Oh, and by the way, before I leave, Primal RTJ. Yeah, RTJ, Trudy. No has to be to both parties. Agreed. Two-headed vulture. Right, to the same thing. Rob Illinois, you sniveling little bitch. Shut the fuck up and board the ship. That hurts, Rob. Balthazar 228. Time-traveling Russian alien bots hacked my phone. Those bastards. Phrase is, the lesser of two evils is still evil. I feel like that needs to be said in somewhat of a dainty way. Our donors have paid us to lose enough to allow the GOP to build coalitions and make constitutional amendments without us. DNC. Oh, I missed that one, Balthazar. I missed that one before. I love that. Our donors have paid us to lose enough to allow the GOP to build coalitions and make constitutional amendments without us. Hashtag DNC. I love that. And you know, it's worse than that. They've also allowed those things to attack and destroy unions. They've allowed certain, bills, amendment, or certain policies, positions, and everything else to be passed to lower taxes for some, while everybody else flounders, meaning the services and everything else that will make people's lives easier and better get put to the wayside. People compensate for that by increasing the amount of debt that they take on, making their lives harder. And the Democratic Party ticks along, pointing to how terrifying the Republican Party is, to scare up your vote because you have a hard time figuring out what they value, if they value anything at all. So, Balthazar, good comment. It always amazed me. I was like, why on earth are you letting your black voters get kicked off the rolls, the voter rolls in this way? Why on earth are you not protecting the vote in this way? I guess my feeling was in Florida, when Al Gore lost, I think it was like 200,000 votes, black votes, thrown off the rolls. Al Gore didn't even back those guys up in order to try to fight for those votes. Like, in one constituency after the next gets attacked. You have another thing with the Voting Rights. Voting Rights Act gets taken down. That in and of itself is mind-blowing. And these voter laws. You would think that the Democratic Party would make a big fucking deal about those voter laws. They don't make a big fucking deal about those voter laws. Meaning in these different states, you can use a gun license, but you can't necessarily use a student license. We're shutting down these polling locations in this particular area of town. We're extending the lines in this area. We're gerrymandering this particular district. Like, all of these things that aggregate to making life harder for the Democratic voter, you would think that the party itself would have done something about it. They've done squat. They stood by where their unions got decimated. Unions being one of the main powerhouses to the party at one point. They stood by and let it get decimated. I suspect that part of the reason they let it get decimated is because you have labor and you have plutocrats now within the same party. And at the end of the day, the plutocrats are giving Democrats a lot of money. So labor, the best they can get is lip service. So as Republicans comes in, they go after labor whole hog. Democrats, they're apathetic. So by virtue of being apathetic, it makes it look as if, hey, these guys are better. Technically, yeah, maybe they are better, but do you just want apathy? Do you want somebody to actually vociferously represent your interests in the same way Republicans represent the interests of people, their donors, and for the matter, Democratic donors? I want Democrats to represent me like they represent their donors. That's what I want. I want them to represent me in the way the Republicans represent their donors. Whatever party I belong to, that party should, to some degree, represent your interests. I may not necessarily know where I am, but I know where I'm not. I know where I'm not. I don't see the point in being. And I know I know you guys are saying, well, dude, you're saying you vote for Sanders. Yes, I would vote for Sanders because I don't necessarily have this thing where it's a blank slate. But there are like 3 people in that party. And I think a lot of people have this hard thing of untethering themselves from the party, almost as this kind of cultural choice, this kind of cultural decision in the way they make their votes. And I can understand it. It's not the easiest thing to do when you grow up that particular way. But at some point you realize that if you really want to get something accomplished, if politics is really about getting something accomplished, the radical status quo is not going to be able to do it. And this kind of incrementalism that you may get from a Democrat doesn't cut it. It's time for a change. And you're not going to get a change by dealing with the same people who you've always essentially gotten for the Democratic Party. So, or at the very least, going back to Clinton. So I'm going to end this here. I want to thank you guys for showing up. You guys are awesome. It's 9 o'clock and I've been on this thing for hours. So you all have a good and decent night and be safe. Thanks, everyone.